So now I'd like to invite Jack Manning to share the story of the Constellation of Calvary Church in Underhill and St. James in Essex Junction. And I don't know if he has a team or not with him. Maybe so, but anyhow, let's hear from them. Let's hear their story.
As Ed Sullivan said, we got a really big show for you, so just stand by for a moment. And while they're coming up here, let me share a couple of anecdotes with you. So I am Jack Manning. I'm senior warden at Calvary Underhill. What I saw in this, first and foremost, was, wait a minute, there's stars. It's got to be a constellation. It's all about us. And then I saw the foot, and I remember the bishop from last convention saying, step out of the boat, take chances, right? And then there's a whole bunch of other things in there. But also I wrote down navigation, right? And Amma Kim, who I've been working with, is a master at navigating through all sorts of stuff. So our team is Amma Kim from St. James. We have Jenny from St. James as well, and we have Nancy from our church. And it's been a lot. Okay, yes, agree. But so thank you, Bishop, and thank you, Susan, for giving us the opportunity to speak with you today. We actually did our homework, and we put a fair amount of effort into putting together a presentation. We actually got together for soup supper on Thursday, kind of walked through what we were going to do, and then 10 o'clock yesterday morning, I found out there's no screen, there's no projector. You're going to wave your hands, kid, just like the old days. So, but the presentation is online at the convention website. So you can pick up our charts if you want to, but I'm going to wave them a little bit to show you what we're talking about here in a few minutes. And I want you to think back to the musical The Music Man. Do you remember Professor Hill has a technique for teaching kids how to learn music, and it is the think method, right? So I want you to think that there's a screen up here and a projector, and we'll go through it. So first off, the theme that we came up with is getting to know you. So if you look at the first chart, there's a nice smiling group of people who were the two vestries getting together, and at the end of the day, it's really been all about getting to know each other. And I appreciate the bishop's comments about Eucharist being a driving force for a lot of congregations. For us, and with Kim's guidance, it's really been about doing things together. And so we're going to walk you through that story a little bit. And the subtitle is The St. James Calvary Constellation Story So Far, okay? Then the next chart you'll see is an agenda chart. That's fine, but I like PowerPoint, so you got to have more smiley faces of vestry people working together, which they're doing. And then today's presenters, that chart would be the people you've just been introduced to, plus Brian Garland, who is a senior warden at St. James. Just a marvelous guy to work with, and he and Kim and I have probably had more cups of coffee than there was in the Sea of Galilee at the time going through all this. The next chart would be, again, a little bit of an introduction to what our parishes are all about in terms of numbers. So if you were to look at that, we took a Google Maps chart and realized that we are, by the numbers, 9.8 miles and 18 minutes from each other. So some of the other constellations that were just recited about, you guys have a much more daunting task in terms of being in relation to each other. We can get on Route 15, be there in a few minutes. I'm going to read off a couple of numbers, all right? Average weekly attendance, St. James 43, Calvary 17. So get a chance of how big they are. Annual budget, St. James about $160,000. For Calvary, that's a whopping $35,000. Investments, St. James around $250,000, Calvary $183,000. Additional funds, St. James about $75,000, Calvary $37,000. Debt, $0. Okay, so if you think about it from kind of a layperson's perspective, it's not a bad position to be in. Both congregations are pretty solid, pretty stable. They're the senior partner, we're kind of the junior partner, but that's fine, right? We have things we can do together. So the way the presentation is set up, I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the mechanics of what we've been doing and how we've been doing it. And if you were to pull up the presentation, you would see a chart I'm going to show you in a little bit about steps and all that. And we can talk about what worked well, what didn't. But and then what we're going to have is a Nancy and Jenny come up and talk about the perspectives from the parishioners. Okay, that's really the meat of the presentation. And then at the end, we'll have Amma Kim come up and give her perspective from clergy. So A long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, which happened to be March of 2023, we needed to have a search for clergy, and Linda Grants was kind enough to coach me through all of that. So that was the first time she sent a letter and said, why don't you talk to Amma Kim? And that's where this all started, okay? If you were to look then into the charts, there would be this eye chart that would show you the process that we've gone through, okay? So think back to 2023, it's gonna be 3 years in March, okay? And what this shows you is that we went through some phases. So the phases at the top, I said, 2023, kind of getting to know each other, a couple of parish meetings, or a couple of clergy meetings and vestry meetings. And then early part of 2024, lots of discussion, parish meetings, votes, all that kind of stuff. And then this black part here is really where we called the initial constellation. We called it the beta because we have agreements in place and all, and it's let's go try this thing, okay? So you're at the very end of our experience in this beta phase, and one of the things that we've done, for example, is from a Eucharist perspective, we said, you know what, at Calvary we're going to close the doors once a month and we're just going to go to St. James. It's 9.8 miles away, 18 minutes, we can make it. And well, are they ever going to come to our services? They might. But we only get Amma Kim once a month. We do morning prayer and everything else, other than that. But if we go there, we can have Eucharist and a great coffee hour, and it's at our favorite price, okay? And all of a sudden, it's like, well, okay, well, maybe we'll try that. So all of a sudden, we start showing up at the doorstep. We're obviously warmly greeted because we're Episcopalians. And then, and it's been lovely. And what you're going to hear come out of the conversations from the parishioners is, some of the elements we've done. So if you want to look them up, the next couple of charts would show you a list of things that we've actually tried to accomplish and actually done. We can point to it and say, yeah, we've started a men's group. 3 people showed up at the first meeting, but we started, okay? But the other things that are important was we formed a joint vision team, okay? That didn't have anything to do with things other than what can we do together? What are we going to do for services? What can we do for outreach? That sort of thing. St. James was well ahead of us in terms of having lay ministries in terms of preaching. So guess what? We've had friends from St. James come and preach at Calvary. Now remember, we're up there by ourselves. We've been having morning prayer. We haven't had a lot of preaching. All of a sudden we have people who are certified to do it. And in turn, some of our people have gone through the training as well. So it gave us bench strength in terms of clergy and service. The other thing we had is a seminary intern that was lovely, so we're fortunate to have gone through all of that. So that's our process. Just think back to, we had some coaching from the diocese. We got started. Kim and I got together, and Brian kind of tried to direct traffic. Lots of communication, I think. And the last thing I'll make a note of is that St. James had probably I'm not going to say a harder task, but a more intricate task. If I look at the artwork here that we just talked about, navigation for St. James is a lot harder than it is for us because most everybody at our congregation's on the vestry, so they just go along with whatever we're going to do. And but it's been a great journey. We've gone through these phases, but it really has been the theme is getting to know you. So now I'd like you to share some experiences. Jenny's going to start off talking about St. James. She's been there. She'll tell you her background, but she's going to give her perspective, and then I'll ask Nancy to come up and give hers. You're on. Oh, incidentally, the 3 prompts were the ones that Canon Susan gave us. That's this chart right here, which says, what was the initial reaction in your parish? How has the process gone for the past 18 months, or while you've been doing it? And what are the expectations for the future? So you're on. Thank you, Jenny. See, I remembered your name second time.
Very good. So I just want to start out by saying I have taken a COVID test. I do not have COVID. Number 2 is it doesn't hurt. It may hurt you, but it doesn't hurt me. So we'll see how long it lasts, my voice, that is. I have to call my choir director when I get home and tell her I won't be singing tomorrow. So I'm Jenny Ogilby, and I've been a member of St. James for, quite a few years. I've been a member of St. James since 1964. And so I'm one of the oldest in terms of time there, members. And I go back a long way in terms of relationships with Calvary Underhill. Back when I was very small, baby, my father was a curate here at St. Paul's, although it was up on St. Paul Street, of course. But and he used to go to Underhill as a part of his duties, and so sometimes I would go along with him. And we did a lot together. Both of our churches, St. James and Calvary Underhill, did a lot together back then, back in a long time ago, again, 1953. And then over the years, we have been part of Calvary Underhill in terms of helping them out when they've had issues. They had a problem with their stained glass windows, I believe, and other things, and we've helped them out with that. So for a long time, we've done stuff together. And so my first reaction to joining together as a constellation was, why do we have to do that? Why do we have to take that formal test? Why does it have to be so formal? Because we've been doing it naturally. As Jack said, we're not very far apart. We're pretty close together. As a matter of fact, I live just down the road from Calvary. So that was my reaction, and I think a lot of people felt that way. It's like when you hear about something that you don't know much about, you get nervous, and you wonder, what's in it for us, number one, and is it going to cost anything? Is it going to cost us anything? That's a chief thing that people think about. And so a lot of us were very nervous. And then I was part of the vestry at that time that we made an agreement to start. And as Jack said, the two vestries met together, and it was pretty awesome to meet a new bunch of people that were dedicated to church leadership and the gifts that they had to offer. So in this past 18 months, we've had a lot of chances to meet together. We meet together once a month on the fourth Sunday of the month. And we've actually declared that for now, we've declared that that's Guitar Sunday. And so they have a couple of guitarists, and John joins us at St. James every month when he comes with the guitars. So we have a joined group of guitars. And then there's a couple of people who actually come on the Thursday before the Sunday that we're gathering and join the choir. And so we've been able to do that together. When we first began, we went out there for Maundy Thursday, and they hadn't had a Maundy Thursday for service for many, many years. And so it was nice to be able to bring that to them. And so various things like that where we've gotten together. One Sunday we were together at St. James, and Calvary was talking about their famous or infamous sausage and pepper and hot dogs. Yes. Don't forget the hot dogs. Sausage and pepper and hot dogs that they have together, that they sell at the Harvest Market, which is a fairly famous market around Vermont. It's the last weekend in September. And they asked us if we would like to join them to help them, but also if we had something we'd like that would come together. So a bunch of us lay people said, okay, let's talk. So we went around to one another and we said, we could make pies. And so we did, and we brought the pies up there, and we had so much fun. It was a lot of fun. So we did that last year, and we did it again this year. I think we'll keep doing it as long as they're cooking the sausage, we'll bring the pies. And I expect that what we've learned to do together, and it is not clergy-driven, it is lay-driven. It bubbles up from the lay people. Our expectations for the future is that we'll continue along as we are and get to know each other better and find other different ways that we can gather together as a group. And, you know, we're all sitting together here today. It's pretty awesome. When you look, you know, usually there's the three of you plus the clergy, and we've got a whole row. So that's pretty awesome. That's a good reason to be together as a constellation.
Great. So don't forget the secret handshake. Right? We have a secret constellation handshake.
Oh, yeah.
One of the other best practices that they did was, yeah, thank you, Jenny. One of the other best practices they did, and because they're a little bit bigger congregation, they really formalized going through the needs, wants, and concerns at the beginning of this. So Brian and the vestry had put together a bunch of feedback, and, you know, frequently asked questions, and then the answers. And so we obviously stole that idea and did it at the same place at our thing. But it was actually a nice way to make sure they captured everybody's concerns. Okay, so Nancy, are you ready? Okay. Nancy knows all, sees all at Calvary. She's a parishioner and vestry member who very quietly goes around and gets people's inputs and opinions. It's her version of pastoral care. And when we asked her to speak here, we said, would you please go and get inputs from everybody, which she did. And next thing I know, it's, I don't know, Thursday afternoon, I get a call from Nancy. So Jack, what do you think about the constellation? So I had to answer it too. Floor is yours.
Well, I'll just dive into it. First question, initial reactions, feelings, concerns at the onset and planning of the constellation. A number of parishioners were hesitant and apprehensive at first. Facing such a change was challenging, especially with certain items unclear at the start. A good number were dealing with sadness about Bob Stillman leaving, our previous minister considered quite special. One person said she was not 100% game. She doesn't like change in general, as others said. Feels she had just opened up to Calvary. She's kind of shy. And now facing the adjustment to the larger St. James. I myself was not happy when it came on. Worry and fear regarding the possible loss of Calvary, both in the physical and in its identity. John voiced this as well, fearing the Calvary identity could evaporate quickly. I and several others were not eager to attend St. James at first, not knowing at first how often that would be. On the optimistic side, while Pam was a little concerned about travel time, their later start time made it work. Some of our newer parishioners saw it as not as big an adjustment. Gretchen had no concerns, viewing the constellation as necessary. Edna, not a newcomer, felt that joining in with someone, St. James was a good choice. And let us not forget the bonus of 2 Eucharists a month. And finally, on this question, our senior warden, Jack, has always been partial to the constellation. While he had some concerns going in, like the possibility of losing parishioners, we didn't. He felt we needed to have a way to carry on. How has the process gone for 18 months? A unanimous positive response, pleased with how the constellation has turned out, several saying it has worked out better than they thought it would. Some phrases people offered about St. James, that there's lots of participation on both sides, nice fellowship, great cooperation and working together on a number of joint activities. He finds St. James welcoming, accommodating. Another likes the opportunity to meet others outside our, quote, small, loving parish. Jack, as he said, is pleased with the chemistry between the two churches, a good working group with Brian, the other senior warden, and Amma Kim. As Jenny mentioned, Pam enjoys doing music with the St. J choir, a choir who knows what they're doing. And John, as we said, is very pleased with the guitar group. Gretchen found St. James polite and inclusive. They have welcomed us with open arms. Likes the combination of the two churches, which leads to a variety of experiences. Of note, after conferring with Pam, who has an eye for such things, approximately 3/4 of Calvary Active Parish attend the joint services at St. James. Building relationships have been a major goal. I found that sources of this current success have a combination of acceptance of changes over time, going with the flow, which are greatly enhanced by both sides joining in the multiple opportunities. A side portion of this question was our response to Amma Kim, our priest in charge. Edna is fine with Amma Kim. She hopes for the next minister to be as fine as she. Now, I could just stop right there. Oh, I was one who needed to get used to Kim a bit. She made changes right away regarding anti-communion, sermon and lay leadership certifications, and later rotation of vestry. She got us playing by the book and was sometimes referred to as the sheriff. Yes. Pam was fine with certification, having done morning prayer for many years. Felt the certification was a good opportunity to learn more. John admits some rebellion over stopping anti-communion, as he is now is more comfortable with morning prayer and its transition. John said he got used to Kim's ethics, and as he did, he fell in love. Speaking of which, many of us came to love Kim, now sad at her leaving, including myself. I have warmed up to Kim very much, seeing her warm side and support as well as her great effectiveness. Expectations for the future. As I mentioned, widespread sadness regarding Kim's leaving, along with anxiety about the process of finding a new priest in charge. There will be a gap before we find one, and people are groaning about supply priests all over again, which is not such a bad thing. I've loved ours. Kim has a great pastoral gift. She will be highly missed, according to Barbie. Jack has some concerns about keeping momentum. Gretchen doesn't know what to expect. Good as it is, many agree to that, and a lot offered. Expects good as long as Calvary stays alive. On another note, Edna has hope for more parishioners, and that is a big goal of the Vision team. Edna's been discouraged with general numbers not caring anymore, many leaving, speaking of many churches struggling, not just the Episcopalians. Building relationships has and will be a major goal. And in closing, how has the transition from worry about change to acceptance come about? When encountering major changes, there is always speculation, which is accompanied by fear of the unknown and uncertainty. Over time, speculation is replaced by experience, and that experience has proven to be uniformly positive. We all have been working the program. Given the many positive experiences here, constellations appear to be a solid path which we plan to continue. Thank you.
Isn't she great? I mean, she did her homework, and as did Jenny. So I think that gives you a good feeling about the parish. So Amma Kim is going to speak last from a clergy perspective. We were trying to think what would be a good format, and she can do whatever she wants. But we came up with the whole idea of, gee, you're the outgoing minister or priest in charge. Maybe you leave a letter in the altar or something, just like the good presidents do, and you can reflect on that. I just want to say, too, that I have thoroughly enjoyed working with her. I will miss her dearly. She's more than my minister. She's my dear friend. And, yesterday she unscrewed me from the ceiling when I realized there was no projector and no screen. And, her guiding hands, it's going to be okay, just breathe. As my wife said, you talk a lot anyway, you'll get through it. Okay, Amma Kim, you're on, man.
Good morning. Can you stand a few more minutes from us? I couldn't be prouder of these people. I couldn't be prouder. When the wardens were putting together a plan for this presentation, considering I am retiring at the end of the year, now you just stole my thunder. I asked Jack what he thought might be helpful for my part, and he said, how about writing a letter to the next priest who would follow, kind of like some of our presidents have done when the next one comes, and that seemed like a great idea. Though yesterday, when I put some thoughts to paper, it also felt a little like that old cartoon. Do you remember, I'm dating myself, but do you remember that old cartoon with Mr. Peabody and Sherman? Do you remember at the end, the little guy comes around and cleans up the floor after a great message had been given? That's kind of what I felt like. I'll only take a few minutes to share from my perspective what's been important and might be important going forward. Of course, forming a constellation and coming into one already formed are two very different things. When we started about 2 years ago, of course, I was already at St. James, but we really didn't have much of a template to follow. And that can be challenging to create something out of a blank canvas. Ask any artist. Though, as Jenny said, St. James and Calvary have had relationship in the past years. It can also be life-giving in terms of creating a new thing. That's why I love that lesson appointed for today. It's a new thing crafted to one's own situation. So here goes. Dear future priest of St. James and Calvary parishes, I have had the great privilege of leading during this time with senior wardens Jack Manning and Brian Garland, Deacon Dave Ganter, the Reverend Janet Brown of blessed memory, and our two vestries, as well as countless others who exercise leadership in so many ways. I leave you with two beautiful communities, not perfect, but good-hearted and willing to risk trying new things. I wasn't interested in a collaboration that only shared a priest without other real relationships. This had been tried, as Bishop Shannon has said, in the wider church, and often leads to burnout of clergy. So when we began, our deliberate intention was to build real relationships between the parishes, though we did not know how that would take shape. Relationships are the key to a spirit-filled constellation, and they are built by doing things together. We have had the good fortune, as Jack has said, pointed out, of being relatively short distance from one another. So that was really working for us. To build, you need to have or develop a strong, open-minded leadership team that is willing to take a few risks, who will take time to do this ministry, as it can be very time-intensive, to be willing to fail, most importantly, to have good senses of humor. Some of my fondest memories of building have been times of planning with the senior wardens over coffee and with the two vestries over conference tables. Building constellations sometimes comes at a crisis point when two or more parishes need to have a priest and cannot afford one on their own. However, I'm glad we took time for careful and thoughtful building other than sharing a priest, and for getting most congregants on board even before sharing a priest. Even better, if you're entering into a constellation already up and running. Listen with your heart, expect surprises, help your congregations to not focus on what they can't do, but on what they might be able to do, be it sharing formation times like Bible study or book studies or other learning opportunities, either in person or over the internet, or having fundraisers together, or supporting outreach efforts together, or separately and pooling the proceeds to better help the needs of others in our communities. If you can possibly worship together, this will make the heart work all the stronger. It has been crucial for us. Help your parishes to know that building a constellation is not about moving to close them, but one of the hopeful ways we can avoid closing. And that, of course, their identities can be preserved, even as you expand things done together. And if this is your first gig in the priesthood, there is already a huge learning curve. It really doesn't matter how old you are when you start such a ministry. So take care of yourself, honor your days off and your time commitments. Don't burn out in silence. Your wardens and vestries have already learned how to take many burdens off their priest, such as leading services of worship, administration, caring for buildings without needing to call on you to come and fix the whatever, helping with pastoral care. Reach out to others in the diocese if you need a listening ear. They are here for you, your bishop, your canons, and others. And as a very wise priest in this diocese, Bob Stuhlman, said to me even before I came to St. James about 10 years ago, almost, just love them. Just love them. Thank you.
And isn't she grand? Okay, so the last chart, if you were to look it up, shows a picture of some constellations. We don't have a fancy name yet. We're going to try and do that before the end of the year. So if you have any ideas, please contact one of us. So I'm sorry if we ran over a little bit, but I think the quality of what you heard was important, very sincere, very well researched, and it's been a pleasure to work with this team. And later we'll have a picture of the four of us up here for posterity. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Actually, I gave you all some extra time, so it's fine. We're not over time. But, and don't go too far, do people have any questions for our presenters? Because if you do, you can ask them. We actually have to, we're ahead of schedule, so to speak. Yeah. Any questions? You don't have to. Maybe you're shy. Go ahead.
When you were forming as a constellation, did you talk to other constellations that had been denying that?
Did you hear that question?
Conversations like, and have you continued in those relationships as well?
I think one of the things that Linda Grants pointed out to me, that this is the arranged marriage business, so you just don't go knocking on anybody's door and say, hey, you guys want to do a constellation. So I think from my perspective...
Although sometimes they do.
Hey, for us, we've been playing by the rules pretty well. But yes, I had a couple of conversations with some other parishes early on. And that's when I realized that the importance to many of having Eucharist every Sunday. And Underhill felt like a pirate ship. You know, we were up there kind of rolling our own. And we had Bob maybe once or twice a month. And so we're kind of used to doing all that. But since then, we've had the opportunity, Brian and I, for example, have met with a couple of senior wardens with other parishes just to talk about our experience. So that's about as far as we took it. Sure, come on up.
I don't know if they're there, so Susan Figlin, I'm from St. James. When we had a parish-wide meeting, when we were first starting seriously to talk about constellating, we didn't know what to call it with Calvary. We actually had a couple of folks come from an existing constellation. It was South Burlington and Virgins. And they had been through a process of calling somebody new separately. Then they had to go through the process again. I don't know the whole story there. And they learned that working together and having a single search committee was very important. And I think that has been successful. That was a very important lesson for us to hear, because while Kim had not told us when she was going to retire, at that point we knew it wasn't more than 5 years in the future. We knew that that was going to be coming up for us. And we realized that we could wait. And then Kim worked half-time for St. James. We could wait until she retired and then find a constellation partner to go find a priest. That didn't sound smart. We didn't understand what being in a constellation meant. As a vestry, we discussed. It was important for us to learn before we had to go into search for a new rector. And I think that was a lot of the spirit when we ended going into this. It was a beta, as Jack said. We all talked about it. It was 18 months. We're going to try this thing out. We're going to see what we learn about it. We're going to work together. And that's going to set us up for the future when we have to move to our next phase. And I think that's worked out fantastic. So I just wanted to share that.
Anybody? Sir? Yeah, just... love your cracks.
Oh, thank you. I'm purple today. I'm Becky Coletti, and I'm from St. Luke's in Fairhaven, and I have a name for you guys. Gemini, the twins. And it talks about many cultures have seen two humans in this star pattern. And later on, it talks about that they're not identical twins, they're fraternal twins. So they're not trying to be exactly the same, they're different. And each of the two Castor and Pollux in the constellation have two really bright stars, and one of the humans is different shape and size than the other one. There you go. Just a possibility.
I love it.
You can hear me now, speaking here. Walter Browners, Christchurch, Montpelier. Bishop mentioned about engagement in your community, regardless of where you live. And I wonder if, whether in Underhill or Essex, what impact, if any, have you seen? And I noticed on the map, Jericho is in between. So you guys, what impact in your region have you seen, whether with other churches in your heritage community, interactions, have you seen involved? And if you haven't, that's okay. I'm curious to know about the community aspects of your ministry.
I'll take the Calvary approach, even though I'm speaking for the Constellation, but I invite anybody from St. James to chime in. One of the advantages we had is the number of outreach programs that St. James has, okay? So, and in our world, in Calvary's world, we only have a few outreach things that we really do regularly, food shelf, that sort of thing. We have these monthly soup suppers that are at will donation, and we're always looking for people to make donations to. And so we started, pilfering organizations out of St. James. They would come, they'd make maybe a little presentation, and they'd walk away with $200 or $300. So, I wouldn't say it's from our perspective, it's been a big community impact, but you got to remember too that because our proximity is such, Jenny said, she lives around the corner from Calvary and drives all the way to St. James. I just don't get it. But I think it's something to build on, right? And I don't know if anybody from St. James wants to answer that question or add any more to that. Sir?
Titus, would you like a microphone?
Titus Pressler from St. Matthew's in Enosburg. Jack, in your presentation, you used the terminology of junior partner and senior partner, which seems to reflect the differences in size. Mm-hmm. Not all may be comfortable with that sense of junior and senior. Can you talk a little bit about the ramifications of getting into that?
So the first thing I did, at our first vestry meeting after this thing got rolling, I said, we're going to vote on whether or not we want to be called St. James East. And just everybody freaked out, right? And so it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek. And I think some of it, there is no real sense of senior and junior. At least in my opinion, I think we're all comfortable. But we recognize financially, for example, when we go to make a call, Susan was just up here, we're going to talk about contractually, if you're somebody looking to be priest in charge of our constellation, you're going to want one paycheck from one organization. You don't want two paychecks if you can avoid it. Naturally, it makes more sense to come from St. James, and our line item will be to supply funds at an agreed to level to St. James to support that. So I would like anybody else who wants from our delegation, but I don't see any, it's a Jackism, it's a little tongue-in-cheek, but we joke about it a little bit, but I think we absolutely feel like we're dealing with peers, and that's one of the strengths of it. So I need to be careful sometimes with the way I use my colloquialisms, but other questions? Yes.
Hi, I'm Susan McMillan, Vermont Interfaith Action. You said something about freaking out, and I wonder, I assume not everyone was on board at the beginning. So have you felt that people came along over the time and that you gathered steam as you learned from the process?
I think that's absolutely true. And I think some of the things you heard from Jenny and from Nancy reinforced that. Everybody had concerns, and I think one of the when we first started broaching this, the biggest concerns on Calvary's side are we going to close? We're going to be merged with St. James. And so I just started teasing people. I said, I'm here. The ship's been here since 1843. It's not going down on my watch, okay? Next question, please. So, and I think, but on the St. James side, it's a bigger group, right? So you have different, I'm not going to say factions, but there's, different concerns. And they really, really did a good job of fleshing out, getting everybody's concerned and then answering them. The answer might be we don't know yet, we've got to work on that. For example, right now we're working through the finances of what's the Constellation budget going to look like if we make a call, all right? We don't have all the answers yet. There's anxiety around that, but we definitely feel like we're dealing as peers, and I think that's a fair statement, yeah. Sir?
I got you here if you don't want to walk up.
And I left my coffee back there. I'm Chas Coletti from St. Luke's in Fairhaven. And at our last vestry meeting, we've been discussing this for a while. And we have about 7 to 8 congregants on a Sunday. And the local parish, I won't name it, just the most local parish that it would be appropriate to join with, they have a larger population. So we made remember the Melanie song from the 60s? You've got a brand new pair of roller skates, I got the brand new key. They've got the population, but we've got the priest. So my question is, are the 2 parishes holding their own, or are they adding members to Christ's church?
I'd say if you look at Calvary anyway, our numbers have stayed stable, right? We certainly haven't lost anybody as a result of this. That was one of the questions that Nancy had asked everybody. I don't think St. James has either. I'm looking at you guys, right?
We did listening by Christmas, I'll let you repeat it. We have gained some new members.
Yep.
Unfortunately, lost some dear members.
Right. But that's, you would consider that sort of natural, kind of natural attrition type stuff. So I think it's been, if anything, it's kind of solidified the congregations, and that's been our experience. So how are we doing on time? We're done. All right.